Right on. All right,
Nice.
everybody. I'm here with my awesome friend, Amy, and we're just wanted to tune in and just have a conversation and just really talk about all things deconstruction. We've been through, both of us have been through a pretty heavy, and I know a lot of people have gone through this and are going through it right now, pretty heavy deconstruction season,
Mhm.
the foundations and the rocks and the weeds in our hearts that were so steeped in Christianity and religion and what we were in our highest truth have kind of been uprooted and removed in many ways. And before we got on the call, we were just talking about that. It's real. Amy was saying that it's really important for people to know. They need to know our journey. You guys need to know our journey and see what we went through in order to really understand deconstruction. Because there's a lot of people in church structures in different places that are, feeling the pull into the new, into something different, transcending certain doctrines and limitations, but you might just not know where to go, where to start, or like what's happening for me. And so, yeah, Amy,
Yeah.
why don't you tell us just a little bit about what's going on with your journey and your deconstruction and anything else that you want to share, and we'll just kind of flow with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's important to know where we come from, like where when I was in Christianity, how actually devout I was, and how
Mm,
honestly, like
yeah.
I felt like if God would have asked me to, if He did ask me to leave my hometown, I'm going. Like anything, like I followed Him wherever He asked me to go. So I had that really devout, but I didn't have a strong foundation in myself. See, because of I
Mm,
was carrying so much hurt and so much pain. So I was doing it out of striving. And even though I felt like I was giving God my whole heart, it still was just such a small fraction of what I'm able to give now. So for me, going on this deconstruction journey, when God started to call me out of the church, it actually started in 2017, but I didn't really have a grid for it. And then in 2019 is when I actually left the church. I listened to a podcast by Francis Chan in January, and it kind of just wrecked my world, where I
mm,
started to really look at my church going and going, okay, what am I actually doing here? And that's when I started to feel the pull and the draw, like I'm asking you to leave the church. And when I first started to hear God's voice say, hey, can you step out of the church, please? I thought it was Satan. I was like,
mm,
obviously, I'm being
yeah,
withdrawn into the wilderness to be destroyed. I gotta, I'm just gonna keep pressing in. I'm gonna worship even harder. I'm
yeah.
gonna, you know, I'm gonna be there all the time. And then that took me from January all the way up to June. And
Mhm.
then in June, I was like, you know what? I can't fight this anymore. It's like constantly, every time I walk in the doors, it's like, I asked you to leave. What are you doing here? And I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
Wow.
okay, I'm gonna take a break for the summer. And so that's what I did. I took a break for the summer and just hung out with my family, went to the lake, did that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
then September came back and I tried to go back to church.
Mm,
And it was like I hit a brick wall the moment I walked in the doors. It was like
mm.
the booming voice is like, what are you doing here? I told
Wow.
you to. And it was like, wow. So I actually took another year before I really started to deconstruct more, because I mourned the church. Because in my mind, it was like,
Totally.
I'm here to serve the church. This is my only grid, is what I
Yeah.
want to be, is in the church.
Yes.
So I thought I was being rejected. I thought I was being deceived. So it
Mm,
took me down a whole, yeah, for about a year of
totally.
mourning, until I started to really, that's when we really started to connect more in 2020.
Mhm.
And you really helped me go through that really desert time of
Yes.
breaking down and finding myself and doing the inner work, doing the inner healing, and in order to get to where we're at now. So yeah,
Mm.
it's been
That's
a
so
long
awesome, Amy.
journey, but it's been so good. Like where I'm at now, I can
Yeah.
honestly say there's been nothing that's been harder but more worth it.
Come on.
So much more. Yes.
It really is worth coming into the promised land. Hey, like in those
100.
dry desert seasons, in the wilderness, through the dark night of the soul and the deconstruction, we don't know if we're going to make it. Like, it's like, you don't know if you're going to make it in it. All you know is like your last highest truth in church, like worshiping and connecting and doing ministry and trying to save the world for Jesus, like is your entire world. I know it was mine. And for people who don't know, me and Amy went to a Bethel offshoot, which was a supernatural school in Alberta area. And so we kind of like were flowing together in the spirit. We were going onto the street and healing the sick. We were traveling to many different churches and prophesying over people and just sharing the word of the Lord to everyone. And it was really our lives. Like we had given everything to
Yes.
it. And so when I started to go in same year, 2017, on that water fast, things just began to
Right.
deconstruct in my life. And I thought I was kind of insane and crazy. And much like you, it was like I was really holding to everything that I knew to be true, that helped me and saved me so much, with like
Yeah.
reading the Bible more, praying in tongues more, worshiping more. And all of the leaders, the well-meaning leaders that were really, all the pastors and teachers and prophets and apostles and stuff were saying, you need to read your Bible more. You just need to renew your mind. And they were really right about me renewing my mind, but it wasn't
Yes.
that I had to add old knowledge or new knowledge to my old mind skin. That mind skin had to be destroyed and laid down. And I had to go through the dying process that Amy was talking about before we could come in to the new thing. And I remember in the middle of your really hard part, Amy, you at one point, like the doctors, like you can talk a little bit about like how much detail you want, but I remember the doctors like diagnosed you with MS. Like you thought, like physically, tangibly, like you thought you were going to die. And there was just like a ton of stuff going on in regards to that, because it really is the pain and the crushing of the grapes that are going to bring about the new wine. So
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really hard time for me because, when symptoms are physically manifesting in your body
it's real,
and
right?
you identify with it, you're like, so they're telling me I went for brain scans, I went for MRIs, and
Yeah.
it was like, okay, this is what we're projecting, but it was MS or ankylosing spondylitis, actually, which is what it was coming down to. But what I really found at the end of the day, the more I did the inner healing and the inner work in my mind,
Yeah.
the stronger that my body became. And then,
Wow.
losing, um, I shouldn't say losing, but the symptoms started to fade
Come
once
on.
I started to do the work within, because I didn't realize the depth of the self-hatred that I actually
Wow.
carried
Yeah.
until I started to search myself. And so I actually prayed one day. I was like, God, just put that mirror in front of my face. Show me myself, because I know that there's issues, but I'm just not aware of what they are.
Mm,
So show me what I need to work
mm.
on. And you know what? That is like a slap in the face when you finally to see, because it's like, oh, I'm actually the cause of all of my issues. It's
Wow.
all on me. So the inner healing and the inner work, I can honestly say I haven't had a flare up, because I used to get flare ups for years. Years I had flare ups. I
Mm,
haven't had a flare up in over a year.
come
And
on.
it was
Awesome.
right. And it was like all winter long, I would be flared up, or, a couple times through the summer, but not so bad. The fall is really when it started. And I haven't had the issues, but that really did come with doing the inner work and
Yeah.
learning to love myself, every little
Wow.
bit of myself, all the little broken pieces. And I was that shattered mirror. I was in
Mm,
shards. I was just a sliver of who I should be.
mm.
And now I can say, like, it's funny because the other night my son was like, Mom, don't you like have any, they were joking around. My sister was over and they're like, oh, she said, oh, I'm dead inside. And she's like, Mom, aren't you? And I'm like, I'm absolutely not. There is nothing inside of me that I can say that I'm carrying like anger or hurt or
Wow.
jealousy or shame, because I faced it. I took the time to
Come
go,
on.
okay, why do I have anger? Why do I have
Yeah.
hate?
Yeah.
Have the shame? And when I faced myself and that's when the healing came. Yeah.
That's so beautiful, Amy. I think let's just take a little time and like frame up the difference between that mindset that you just described there of taking responsibility for all of the stuff that's coming up rather than believing the external sky god is going to be the one to come and maybe walk through your wall and heal you, or Jesus
Oh,
who's going to heal you. And so for me, I know that that was a massive shift because I was actually fasting extended periods of time, praying that Jesus would come and encounter me and take me to heaven so that I'd be free from all the sin,
yeah.
all the separation consciousness, all the shame, all the lack, all the unworthiness, all of the inadequacy. And I was trying to like starve my flesh out of myself or pray my,
Yeah.
that through works. Right. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, could you just talk a little bit about that? And I think that's why a lot of pain is caught up in this process, because it's like we're thinking about it one way, but it just doesn't, it's not the highest way as into maturity to be actually come like Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because for like in 2017, when I actually started my deconstruction, for a full year, I would get on my face every day for like an hour and I would cry out to God, and I would, snot dripping on the ground and you're
Yeah.
just weeping. And I was so desperate for him. And so I was waiting and waiting and waiting for that moment. Like it's going to happen at any time, you
Yes.
know,
The
I was
fire is
putting
going to fall.
right on
Yeah.
something outside of myself. And
Right.
but that's all we knew. So it's like waiting for that moment. And when that moment never came, it was like, you know, what am I actually doing? But for me now, from that mindset to this, for that, it was that waiting something outside of myself
Mm,
and never looking at the pain that I held within. I was just that, like I said, that shell. I was wearing a mask constantly, putting on that show. I was really good at imitating of what I should be doing and being like,
right.
I'm going to worship, I'm going to do these things. And now I'm I'm conscious of myself. So
Mm,
I've become self-aware, where before I was on autopilot,
right.
and now it's being aware of my actions, being aware of my reactions.
Yeah.
So when something arises within me, I know to go and face it. So if somebody comes and they say something that I'm like, oh, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, I know that's on me, because
Right.
it's what they're sharing isn't gonna, I'm not supposed to carry offense. So if I'm offended, that's my issue, not anybody
Mm,
else. So I really learned to stop putting blame on anybody external and
right on.
looking for something external to come, when it's all the inner work that
Come
needs
on.
to be done in
Yeah.
order to get to, yeah, to get healing. It's
Yeah.
kind of, it's our responsibility. It's on us to
Yeah.
face ourselves.
That's
Yeah.
that's so amazing that you actually like, it's amazing how our bodies are actually like your body from all that self hatred and anger and shame and stuff from over the years was actually projecting like physical symptoms in your body. And I kind of feel
Yeah.
like that, and that's amazing that you like, what I hear is you took responsibility. You took radical
Yeah.
responsibility for everything that was going on in your human experience, and began to see the patterns and the programs of Christianity, of religion, of separation, and began to really see that and be like, no, like why am I just like, worshiping for hours a day? Why am I doing these spiritual practices? And it's like a lot of the time it's actually to try to overcome, like in performance and striving, the lack
Yeah.
that we're feeling within ourselves. And so there's like a few different steps that I've noticed that my soul's gone through in my mind. When I say soul, I mean mind, heart, emotions, just who I am. And it's like, first I was that victim, and out of victim consciousness, we lack the abundance,
Yeah.
we lack the connection with God. And so then we move into the performance based, the striver, right? I'm motivated to overcome the lack. And so then that's exactly what we're describing. But then we come into this really interesting new place through the deconstruction process. And I like to liken it, the caterpillar emerging into the butterfly out of the cocoon. And it's like we begin to live life not by motivation and striving to overcome something we're not, like you said, we've faced ourselves, we've overcome that stuff, and we learn to take on a new mode of operation, which is by inspiration of the Spirit. And we're no longer like crawling on the ground as a caterpillar, but we're like we have wings now, and we're like, wow, we got to like learn how to fly by the winds
Yes.
of the Spirit on inspiration and vibration. And so, how has that kind of panned out for you in the journey, just like in the way that you your life is changed, and how spirituality looks differently now for you?
Mm. Yeah, that's really good. It's like night and day. Like for me, it took me a while to do the reconstruction, because
Mhm.
once I went through deconstruction, I was scared of attaching myself to anything again. So that was still
Yeah.
another journey that we'll have to talk about. But now I I don't feel like I have to think about things so much anymore. If you know what I mean, it's like
Mhm.
I am led by the Spirit with whatever I want to do. If there's somebody that I'm is highlighted to me, I will go and I will pray over them,
Yeah.
or actually for me now, I see people's colors, I see people's,
Yeah.
family members around them. So if that stands out to me, I'll just go up to strangers and talk to them now. So I feel like I have a lot more boldness, but because I'm being led by the Spirit and I'm not trying to strive, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
conjure something up, where before it was that conjuring or that striving, but now I'm just at peace within myself. I can
Mm.
walk in peace wherever I go now,
Yeah.
because I'm not, yeah, like I'm not striving, I'm not trying to conjure something, which is
That's
which
so
is
awesome.
huge, which is huge for me.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that word conjure is kind of like denoted of like witchcraft. And it's like, it's so funny because like when we're in that conjuring performance mentality in kind of church, it's like we would be operating out of the witchcraft, which is the flesh. The Bible says that,
Yeah.
operating out of the flesh is witchcraft. And so a lot of those prayers that we had of like, God come down, or like whatever, like really going hard in ministry, it's like we were actually in the flesh doing spiritual things, which ironically we could chalk up to the definition of witchcraft, which is what we were also afraid of in the church. And so that's just really how like blind we can be in the knowledge of good and evil, just like living in that realm where we're separate from our true self, separate from love, separate from connection, separate from that divine flow of life. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's so great. So what I hear you saying is that you're like free from having to strive, and so for people who are going through this, there's like actually peace on the other side
There
of
is.
deconstruction.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There is so much more peace. But I came into it more recently. It was still, that up and down rocky journey where you
Totally.
get your high highs and you think you've arrived, and then, I'm making it, and then you're plummeting back down. So, just
Yeah.
not to be discouraged, because the highs and the lows are normal. And what I've come to realize with the lows is, this is just showing me still where I have brokenness and lack within myself.
Mm,
So every time there was a low, I started to be thankful for it. I'm like, okay, what is this trying to teach me? What is this
yeah.
trying to show me, so that I can get out of this low place faster and get back into that high state?
Yeah.
So, just on the journey, it's a wild ride, but
Yes.
yeah, worth
That's
it.
that's so awesome. It is. It's a crazy journey because we have to learn how to not try to overcome the lows anymore, but learn to
Mm-hmm.
embrace them, accept them. First become aware of them, and then
Yeah.
allow them, accept them, and love them, and then transmute that low into another high. And that's the pendulum that keeps going back and forth of like, oh man, another pattern in my body of the world that I thought I was came up, and like another, like I just processed a massive shame and fear pattern just 3 weeks ago that's like brought me into a completely new level that I went through with drug addiction. It was like I had this thing in me where I was deep unworthiness, and the shame was so painful that like the fear would come up and be like, you can't go and speak, you can't do anything, you can't do this.
Yeah.
And so I would go and numb out and binge on a bunch of food and stuff. And then I would feel like shit because I was really sensitive to food and it caused inflammation. And then it would give me an excuse not to go and talk, or not to go and do what I was being called to do, or what I really wanted to do in my heart. And I realized, and then so the Spirit took, like in meditation, I was just looking at all these old patterns and programs, like all these memories started coming up when I was in drug addiction, and how like, just like how I didn't feel like I was myself around people, and I could feel their judgment. And it was really me judging
Yeah.
myself. But I was like this sketchy, weird dude who was really drunk or really high. And so I would judge myself, and then I wouldn't feel okay, like I could be myself, and have a lot of shame. So that pattern, I got rid of the drugs and the alcohol, but that pattern of not good enough was still there. So instead of alcohol and drugs, it was just food. And then it just seeing those patterns in my body and facing them, like you're saying, just facing them and loving them and being there for them and holding a space for them, they fell out of my body. Like they dissolved
Mhm.
out, vibrated out of my body like a couple weeks ago. And it's like, now I just feel way better about just like embracing who I am, as weird as I am, as whatever, as great as I am in every single way. And it's like, I'm meant to teach, I'm meant to speak, I'm meant to, and
Yeah.
we all have that. We all are meant to be the greatest authentic versions of ourselves. And that's the becoming process, the remembering process of being born again. And so, yeah, Amy, you can talk about that, or like anything else. What's coming up for
Yeah.
you?
Okay, what's coming up for me is I need to bring up sickness again, because
Okay.
when I was young, I embraced sickness into my body because
Mm,
I found that was how I got attention
yep.
from my mom. So I would fake sick. Well, as a kid, I'm like faking sick to stay home from school, so I can lay on the couch and have chicken noodle soup, right? But as I got older, it kind of just became my life, like everything. Like I
Jeez.
had sickness all the time, but yeah, for me, hold up here because my brain is just drawing a blank here.
It's all
But
good.
yeah, so okay,
The
so I
sickness equals
yes, I
attention.
embraced it. And then as I got older, I read in the Bible where Jesus was going to heal that blind man, and he said, "What do you want me to do for you?" And that kind of just stood out to me because I'm like,
Mm,
why? Why would you mean? What do you mean he's blind? Why would you not want to heal him? But
right.
then it was, hey, if you take away his blindness, and he's a beggar, and then he's going to have to work for himself. He's going to have to do things for himself.
Wow.
And then it's like, okay,
Come on.
so what is sickness for me? And I
Wow.
realized it was an excuse for me. I realized that I had it. If I didn't want to go do something, oh well, I have a flare up. Oh well, I don't feel well. Oh well, I
Yeah.
have this. And so it was a crutch for me that I was holding on to
Yeah.
so strongly. And so
Wow.
I actually had to come to that place where, I don't want to be sick. And
Mm.
it sounds crazy, but you know what?
No, it doesn't.
People do want to be sick.
Right.
People do want to have that crutch, that
Mm,
excuse for,
mm,
attention or whatever.
yep.
And so I had to face myself and go, holy shit, I'm actually
Wow.
manifesting this in my body because I welcomed it and I want it. So
Yeah.
I had to give up my desire for that need for attention from sickness, and release that out of my body in order to move forward and actually heal. So for
Wow.
years, I went to the gym so many times for years, but I
Yeah.
would always fall out of it because I wasn't strong in my body. I wasn't strong in my mind. I
Mhm.
couldn't sustain health in my body.
Yeah.
So, coming out of that sickness, facing myself, realizing that
Mm.
I've created a mess for myself,
Yeah.
and walking out, like I've been going to the gym consistently since March. I'm down like over 40 pounds now,
Come on.
and I can't, and it's like, this is what I want. I want to be healthy. I want to be strong. I want to do these
Yeah.
things. But it's like that Jesus healing the blind man. What do you want me to do for you? Well,
Mhm.
do you choose life or choose death? And I was choosing death
Yes.
in my body so many times that I,
Yes.
yeah, I had to
That's
really,
so good, Amy. Wow, thanks so much for sharing that. I know that a lot of people are going to resonate with their own version of that, because
yeah,
a lot of times we will actually think that we're choosing life, but the deeper internal, we're choosing death. So we're choosing the sickness, we're choosing the lack, we're choosing whatever it is, and then we're trying really hard to strive and saying that's my yes. Now I'm going to overcome my pattern
yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
it's like we weren't deep enough, and that's the blindness that the blind man. That's what I was thinking. It's like the blindness is the darkness. It's like, do you want to remain in your darkness and think that you can overcome it being a beggar, so to speak,
That,
spiritually? Or do you want to actually be made well and see life as it is, so that you can truly come into health and then be empowered by the Spirit to manifest your divine essence in the earth, like having to get the job or whatever the beggar would have had to
right.
do that he couldn't have done before because of the program or the blindness that was blocking him. And so that's just so incredible, that like the depth that these programs have, because I had the same experience. I I was trying to overcome so many different things, but I didn't know who I would be if I let go of that fear of, or that shame of not being good enough, you
Yes.
know? And so my food and whatever else, different things at different seasons, was always the comforter for me, always the
Absolutely, me
number. And it made me really good at praying more. It
too.
made me really good at, pressing in and trying to, it made me really good at running longer and beating my body up more and stuff. And it was all out of a false foundation of not self-love.
Hmm.
When we truly love ourself, which means loving the pattern of the worst part of ourself, loving the fear, loving the shame, loving the inner child that we all run away from, that is the place where the transformation and the healing starts.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I use food as a crutch as well.
Yeah.
So I 100% resonate with that. And now food, I can honestly say, doesn't have a stronghold on me
Mm.
at all, where it was what I would run to.
Oh,
And I would get angry. Like, I just want that chicken sandwich from McDonald's. And, I would be
yeah.
mad until I got it. And now
Right.
I'm like, no, I'm good. But I never thought I didn't in Christianity.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine what my life looks like now, because I thought it would
Totally.
just be, God was going to bless me, but it would be more of the same. But I was so
Yeah.
so empty and so dead inside. My relationships with my children were broken. My relationships with my husband was broken.
Yeah.
We had a semblance of relationship, and we've always loved each other, but it was just, I only had a sliver to give to him, and he
Yeah.
had the same to give to me. And
Right.
our relationship, my relationship with my children, is so beautiful, and my husband is so deep. I'm
Mm.
not using him as a father figure anymore, which I
Mm.
did.
Mm.
So that was huge. I depended on him, for so many things that were, you know, like I said, a father figure should have been like, I want you to
Right.
take care of me. I want you to do this for me. But I wasn't seeing him as the partner. I was seeing him,
Right.
yeah, in a
Good.
different light. So our relationship is flourishing now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's that's so great and so exciting. But I bet you, if we would have asked you, like in the church like 5 years ago, um, you know, and by the way, for people, if like being in the church isn't a bad thing, it's just the
No.
mindsets and patterns that, you can still be in the church and it's cool. It's just the patterns that we were raised in it, um, that are the issue that are holding us back. Sorry, there was just a pop up there. But so if you would have been asked in the church, like in that time in the church, what is it that you like do you have a good relationship with your kids? Do you have a good relationship with your husband? You probably would have said, yeah, they're great,
Oh yeah.
right? Right, like
Oh
you
yeah.
wouldn't have had, so like where does awareness play a role, and like how does one actually determine whether they're actually in a good relationship or not, do you think? Because would you have told them, like told people like, yeah, my relationship's amazing, or my relationship with my kids are great?
I would have actually, because at that time
Right.
it was my highest, right?
Right. Okay.
So
Yeah.
from where I come from and what I had, I assumed I had that.
Mm.
But that was an assumption. I didn't see how I was hurting my kids. I didn't see the
Mm.
distance that I created between my husband and I, because I didn't want to receive his love. I didn't like him to touch me. I didn't like
Mm.
being intimate with him very often. I just wanted my space. I
Right.
loved him. I needed him,
Yeah.
but it wasn't that passionate, fulfilling relationship that we
Mm,
have now. But
mm,
that was, again, because I was so broken and I was putting the blame on everybody outside of myself.
right.
And so, the issues that I seen going on, it wasn't my fault. It was
Right.
someone else's. It was my kid's
And
fault.
and God's gonna fix it, hopefully, right?
Oh yeah, that was the thing. I'd sit in my prayer
Yeah.
closet and be like, God, you got to fix James. You got to fix my kids because they're doing these things, and
Yeah.
I can't connect with my husband. And I was placing blame on them
Mm,
instead of seeing that it was the brokenness in myself that was
yeah.
creating the issues and hurting them as well as myself.
Mm,
So, so yeah, I would have
yeah.
said that, but it would have not been, yeah, it would not have been the truth.
For
So
sure. No, that's great. That's brilliant. Thanks for really well said. Thanks for shining a light on that dynamic because it's so important. And we don't know what we don't know until we actually are brave enough to face ourselves. So
yeah, yeah,
it's
that's just
it's awesome. And so I just got to pop up. It said there's like I don't about 5 minutes left. So I'd just like
okay.
to ask you while we're on the topic of like family and stuff like that. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people out there with kids that are like raising their kids in a religious setting or like want to give their kids with families coming up a really good like foundation. And you said like your relationships changed with them now and it's way better, but you had them under all of the Christian ideals and like principles that you thought were the highest thing for them. But like what have you learned through this deconstruction and becoming journey in regards to raising kids? Because I think a lot of people
Ooh,
need this.
yeah, yeah, I can feel that strongly because I did raise them under the Christian, with the purity culture, and I oppressed them so much that they hid from me and they ran from me and they lied to me and they went
Mm,
out and they did, things behind my back anyway, even though, I didn't know that. I was thought
right.
my kids are good kids, which my kids are amazing kids and always have been. I
Yeah.
just want to be clear with that. But now
Yes.
I allow them to be who they are. I allow them
Yes.
to express themselves to me, whatever that looks like. They have freedom with me to be who they are, and I support them with what decisions they make. I don't put rules out there like you have to do
Mm,
this else. I have expectancy that they're going to do great things, but I don't have expectations on them anymore.
beautiful.
So, what I'm going to guide them, I'm going to support them, I'm going to give them advice, I'm going to give them wisdom. But you know what? At the end of the day, I realize these are actual human beings, not just my children, because I
Right.
had to take that off. Like, these are my kids, they have to do this and they have to look like this. No, these are human beings who have a life, who have just as much of a right to do what they want to do and be who they want to be as I do. And I want to help them be that in any way that I can.
Mm,
So I just chose to take off all judgments and expectations and love them where they're at, even if it's not where I would hope they would be. It doesn't matter because they
mm,
are on a journey just like I am, and I'm just going to
mm.
love them and be there to support them.
Yeah, that's so good, Amy. Right on. Yeah, you
Yeah.
you you you've taken off expectations, but you still have great like you expect
Yeah.
great things and the best to unfold, which is awesome. But the expectations and judgments and rules that were hindering them, ironically, from becoming that is
Yeah.
are gone now.
Yes. Yes. And one time I want to have a talk with one of my children so that they can share,
Awesome.
how my oppression of them really, was destroying them.
Wow.
So yeah, and yeah, it was
Cut
it,
off the
it
flow.
yes.
The relational flow between you, because when you impose expectations and rules on them, then they go, okay, well, I'm in this is me at this level of consciousness, and so now I
Yes.
have to cut mom out.
Yeah, and they thought they were a failure. They thought, they were a
Wow.
mistake, and they really believed that God made a mistake with them. And it
Wow.
was, what? That just breaks my heart to know that they went through that.
Yeah.
But now be able to share the story that they have is going to be so powerful.
Yeah.
And the one of the things that I want just to be open with is like, I've failed so many times at
Same.
parenting and relationships and everything, but there is hope.
Yep. Amen. That's awesome. It's all reconciled in the journey, in the process, isn't it? It all
Yeah.
it all comes full circle. And so like ironically, all that praying and crying out and everything to God about like it all coming together, like it actually does, but it's answered through a crazy journey in many ways of trial, suffering, deconstruction, the new wineskin shift and everything like that. So
Yes.
any other words of encouragement or just last thoughts that you'd like to say to leave people with?
Mm. Yeah. It's going to be tempting if you're on a deconstruction journey. It's tempting to run back to Egypt. That was what I learned is it's tempting to run back to what's comfortable and what you know. And walking in the wilderness is hard, but you're not alone. And we're here to help you. I'm more than willing to talk to anybody that is going through this journey and is going, what the hell is happening? So
For sure. It's
in
so
there we learn
important.
that. Yeah.
So you guys reach out to Amy. She is a wealth of knowledge. She's been through it. She's the real deal. She has walked the path and she's got a huge heart and she's full of wisdom. So definitely reach out to her on Facebook. Amy, they can just reach out to you. I'll tag you in the
Yeah.
post
Absolutely.
and stuff like that. Right on.
Absolutely. I'm open.
Perfect. Beautiful conversation and we'll be in touch and until next time.
Okay.
See you later.
Awesome. See ya.
Bye.